Welcome. Thank you all for coming this evening. We started our meeting at 6 o'clock with contract issues, and we are back in open session to begin this portion of the meeting. The first thing I would need is approval of the minutes from both our regular July meeting and our special board meeting, which was our board retreat held last week.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on any of those minutes? All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. Next, I need the approval of the agenda for this evening. Any issues?
As written.
As written.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Jack. Approval of that?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. This evening, we would welcome any public comments about any agenda item, if there's anybody in the public that would like to address us. And just know that in the future, if anybody would like to address the board, you are always welcome. Beginning with administrative reports, starting with any board member that would like to share any training or board action within the last month. Nobody has anything to share? All right, thank you. So moving on to a resolution for a district expulsion officer.
If I can just give a little bit of background, there's two items on here with regards to the expulsion officer. Each one of them needs to be dealt with separately. The first one is a resolution that establishes that the board will use a hearing officer for their expulsion proceedings. So that is the first item that requires a roll call vote to establish. And then the second one, after you move to that one, I'll explain as we get there.
Would like a motion to have a district expulsion officer.
I move we designate an expulsion director, officer.
And then need a second. Second. And this needs to be by roll call. Jack?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. And now we will talk about who that person is.
The second item is one that we've been a little bit of a transition with since last spring. If you recall, we had our previous hearing officer was not able to complete the year last year for certain reasons, and we filled in with Attorney John Anderson. John did a nice job for us. I would recommend that we continue with him on the short term until we establish either a process for taking in requests for proposals for a hearing officer, or we consider a process of how we would like to establish who our hearing officer is. Carl Marquardt has been ours for many, many years. I know he has expressed an interest to continue in that role. I haven't followed up since his hiatus with us last spring. And I know John Anderson has an interest to continue with us if so fit, but we certainly were clear with him that that was an interim piece, so there wasn't an expectation of that continuing. So what my recommendation here would be tonight is to get some feedback from the board so I can proceed with either vetting out additional hearing officers to bring back to you for consideration, or to move forward with someone that you feel would fit that role, or names of people you'd like me to reach out to.
Just a question, because I've been on 4 years, and it seems every year whether it's this or the medical officer, is there a defined process where we open it up to any applicant after X number, or we're comfortable with who we have and we just continue on in that way? Is that the norm typically? I mean, I don't know if there's any interest shown from the outside.
Nobody has specifically called inquiring about being the hearing officer. We've had Mr. Marquardt for many, many years.
Right.
And I think we've just continued there. We really haven't had a process to review or analyze that at any point in the past, other than just the short break in service that we've had. certainly doesn't mean we have to go a different direction, but I would certainly want to speak with him to kind of see where he's at. But I also know that there was conversation around our table towards the end of last year, just with regards to how we move forward with all of those from, you notice some of those were expedited and came through a little bit quicker just based on larger staff to work with. So I guess I'm just looking for some feedback on how we would like to move forward with the appointment of a hearing officer. It's really not a topic we've had much discussion on, but if there's feedback, I'd be very open to kind of process you'd like to follow. And if there's individuals locally or other that you'd like me to reach out to or to seek information, I can bring that back to. In the interim, I would ask the board to allow us to continue with Attorney Anderson. I think he's done a nice job for us in the last couple that we had, and then we can move that process forward as it proceeds. Any specific feedback?
You say something first.
Sure. I guess I'll go first. I mean, my initial reaction is that I was concerned when we had the issue with Attorney Marquardt not being able to continue, and then once we knew he wouldn't be able to continue, the next question I had was, well, who did he have as backup? Because it's an ethical obligation, and it's almost always a malpractice carrier obligation for attorneys in Wisconsin. You have a backup when you're unable to continue. So if something were to happen to me, I have partners who can take over. Before I was in a partnership, I had to literally have people lined up to take over family law cases in case I dropped off the face of the earth. Attorney Marquardt apparently didn't have that, so that gives me a little bit of a concern about using him again if he didn't have that.
Okay. And
So-
I didn't ask for that. Is that something? Yeah, so that would certainly be a question if we wanted to.
I mean, when he wasn't able to continue working, the fact that he didn't tell us this is who you call tells me he didn't have one.
Okay.
So
All right.
we haven't asked Attorney Anderson if he has one, but he works in a bigger firm, so
Much
I'm
larger
guessing
firm.
that their malpractice carrier costs a lot more than mine. I'm
Yes.
pretty sure that they would have that for all their attorneys.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough.
I was just going to make a motion to recommend that we follow the administrative recommendation of continuing with Attorney John Anderson as our expulsion hearing officer and further investigate processes to explore more permanent possibilities.
All right.
Second.
Any
So
other?
does the exploration, does that become a policy committee thing or something else?
No, I think we'd.
Or is it
My assumption is we would ask you to investigate what some next steps would be and to present another list of candidates or some process to post it or
right?
determine the next steps.
That's
If
what I
that
was
includes
looking to do.
posting, then to
That's
do
what I
so.
was looking to do.
Yeah.
Was look at kind of where I do have a list of other attorneys that do some of this work, and then the question I also have is this a piece that there's value and challenges sometimes with having a local attorney do it, just with the connections with the community and families, etc.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Does his fee go up every year, or how do we know what his fee is? He just
They present that as part of their piece. I mean, that was a piece that Rebecca and I looked at. And there's quite a difference between Carl and John's fee. Quite a significant difference. That's
And then
part of why I think it's
how are we
worthy also to
defining
look at it.
interim?
Excuse me?
How are we defining interim? Is it, I mean, is it for the interim looking at it as a school year? Is it?
I would say it's as Julie explained it, that it's until we kind of finalize our process for
making a
making a
permanent
formalized
declaration.
decision. Correct.
All
I
right.
mean, my hope is to move that relatively
Sure, no,
soon.
I'm not, just, okay.
And go from there.
Okay, there is a motion on the table. Any other discussion? But I think Randy was also looking at anybody have
Any
names.
suggest anybody that you mean?
I mean, if you have names that you could forward to him, I think that would be helpful as
Do you have
he-
some, Mike, that you've worked with
as
that you know
he
of? Let me know.
proceeds. So,
I guess, obviously we've got to finalize this, but to Mark's point, do we put this out to bid on a 3 or 5 year period?
It's something we have to name by law every year, isn't it?
You have to name it by, you have to establish the hearing officer position annually, and you have to appoint the person annually.
Okay.
So that's the.
But through the appointment process,
Mhm.
you know, can we, you know, look at it on a every third year,
Could be.
you know, because then,
Could be.
That could,
I don't have a problem with that. I mean, the only piece that we run into is this continuity of being able to work with, trying to build that continuity as far as kind of what our process looks like.
And see,
It worked
that
well. It
piece is
worked
being
well with
used
doing
to-
it. It worked well doing it with John. We had to do that. We had 2 of these hearings while he was on board here, so it certainly was something we were able to accomplish. So.
Well, and looking at the mission, I mean, understanding the mission over time, it's not as simple as having a hearing and boom. I think there's understanding, and what we're trying to do as a school district in terms of discipline, punishment, assistance.
but also what it does is if you get, it's like our audit firm, you know, we brought in a new audit firm, new eyes, you know,
Yeah.
new ideas.
To me, with this, I would think 3 to 5 years to review it, because you can build that continuity, but I think we could build something like that in.
okay.
And this being kind of the first year to review it,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
So we do have a motion to continue to use John Anderson with that continual look for a more permanent position. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next, we need to appoint a medical advisor. It looks like Dr. Bill Random is willing to do that again for 2019-2020. I need,
I move we appoint Dr. Random as our medical officer.
Second.
I need a roll call on that.
What does a medical officer do for the district?
Medical officer serves a few capacities for us when we do have, trying to think of an example. Kurt can come on up. Yeah, come on up. I know you work with them probably the closest. We worked with them with things. All I can think of is head lice. I'm sorry. I was trying not to say that out loud, but that was what I was coming up with.
Rebecca, why'd
as
you
far
put
as
me here?
Current medical practices and things like that, and then we get advice.
It's critical.
By law, school districts have to
Yeah.
appoint a medical officer, and it's exactly what the title says. If we have a question about a particular student, or if we're experiencing a certain medical condition that we're just seeing across the district, we contact our medical advisor and seek his input as to actions that we should take. We've used him a lot for, we do occasionally talk to him about head lice, because we do get some parents who think we should exclude students if other children have nits, and many districts right now are just completely eliminating it, even with live lice, louse. Districts are no longer sending kids home because it's not contagious. It's through contact, it's through sharing of hats and things like that, so there really isn't any medical reason why you would need to do that. We also have, Dr. Random has signed off on our orders so that we can have in all of our buildings stock EpiPens, so that if a person, anybody, would come in and they have our anaphylaxis, that we would be able to administer it to that person and not just wait for EMS to arrive. Also recently signed an order that also allows us to administer Narcan if we feel that that is warranted based on the signs and symptoms. So helps us with protocols related to AEDs and all of those kinds of things. So, very valuable, very valuable.
So we have a motion on the table, but we need a roll call to complete that, Jack?
Aye.
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 We didn't do it, did we? Aye.
I'm sorry.
Aye.
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 We haven't done that yet.
No, we have not.
Yeah.
So
Did
you
that
gave me
answer your
that
question?
aye, Judy.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
It's just me. Okay, next is coverage for the first day of school. And I know that we've always done this in the past, but Mark brought up a thought why we are doing this. So as that is passing around, maybe Mark wants to show or share your concerns.
Well, it ties in even with our goals that we didn't get to talk about in our board development. I think at the retreat we talked about looking for more ways to be visible. Concern I have is, given all the different non-board responsibilities people have, some people have a freer opportunity to come in during the workday than not the workday. And as we start saying we want to do things and be more visible, be in the schools on a monthly basis, are people really going to be able to do as much as we want to do? And so if we're going to do something, to me it should be fairly authentic. And this is one day that I've questioned since we've done it. When I was at the high school, I went around and saw the teachers, and it was hard for me to tell the teacher from the students at that point, or some of them, they're so young. So it was really good for me to do that. But in terms of, I looked at, well, one building I got, the principal and I were way too involved for what she or he should have been doing, and I think, and I thought I was a distraction, but they wanted my ear at that point. And in terms of grading the students, they don't care who I am. If they want to see Mr. Carson, well, he's gone. But it's they want to see their kids and their administrator. I'm wondering how authentic this particular day is, invaluable to take off of work to come in to do it. Is it really that valuable in terms of why we're doing it?
I, like you, the kids don't want to see us. You can go to Prairie, you can go to all these different schools, and they could care less if a board member's there. But I've gone and talked to the teachers, welcomed them back to school, and they seem to take that positively.
But would we be better placed then if we're going to see the teachers to go on the day other than when they're looking forward to getting ready for their first day with the kids? Before the first day, or something of that sort, to actually go in and interact with them, short term.
Well, we do the listening sessions.
Why not? I mean, in terms of if we, I don't know. It's just, that was a thought I had.
And I have to say, I sometimes feel very awkward on that day. You're standing there and you don't really know your role. I've taken Jack's approach. I just walk down the hallway and, greet the teachers, welcome them, thank them for coming back. Because the parents and the students, they don't know who you are and they don't care who you are. They're kind of into, let's get that picture under the flagpole, move on. So I guess I could go either way. I mean, I think there's some value in greeting the staff, and
yes.
Maybe we, as a group, should more define our role instead of being awkward. I agree the principals don't have time to deal with you, and maybe we make that known. They, some of them feel like they should take care of you.
Yeah.
But they don't.
I remember one elementary I went to, and the principal actually assigned me to help kids go from one bus to the other, which is great. I enjoy doing that, but why did that person have to take time to find a job for me?
Yeah.
They shouldn't have had to do that.
But my experiences have been all over the map that way too. There have been times that the principal has said, you watch this door and direct them this way, and then I felt like I had something to do.
Yeah.
That makes it better. I do think the staff appreciates when I come. I've gotten really positive feedback from staff thanking me, but my expectation is not that the principal babysit me or have a long conversation with me.
Correct.
It's better if we're more useful.
Julie, has this been around since you've been on the board, or why?
Yeah, it has been.
History.
I can't
It's
see why
history.
they would want me to tell kids where to go on a bus. I mean,
No, at which door to go in, or blah, blah,
even
blah.
that, why, I don't know why I would be there to do that. I don't exactly know what I'm supposed to do, other than wear a big hat and say board member, glad to have you here. I'm lost as to what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I think when I've gone, you know, I did not take much time. It's, hi, I'm from the Board of Education. Thanks, you know, hope you had a great,
You said that too.
to the teachers. Hope you had a great summer. How was it? You know, some of these people go off, you know, tell everything, and the rest, you know, if they're busy, you know, you're in and out. But I think they appreciate that.
But you're looking at 7:15, 7:10, is that when the kids are actually walking through the door, or is that before they start?
That's when the buses are dropping them
That's
off.
when the kids
Buses
are
are
coming,
dropping them
which
off.
seems a weird time to be there then.
Well, they don't know me.
No, I mean,
No, the kids.
to me, that's a
Ah.
weird time because now the kids are coming and, you know, I think then we should be there before then to see the teachers before the kids get there.
I generally get there early, and, you know.
Yeah, I totally get your point. It would be nice to get more feedback from staff on when would be the best time for us to come. What would their preference be perhaps, but.
I
So,
think one of our goals was to be more involved in the school, but I think it should be more authentic.
I totally get what you're saying, but that's the other reason I like doing it, is because that was one of the few times we had a rotation, we all actually made sure we got to one of the buildings. So, if nothing else, it was something we did as a group effort, and we were visible.
And we can talk to the teachers and say, hey, when do you want us to come? And I think we do that with the listening sessions. And some of these listening sessions, you get 3 teachers.
yeah. Well, let's
So-
talk about first day coverage. Are we gonna do it or not do it? Continue?
I say,
I'm doing it whether anybody else is or not. 'Cause
Okay.
It's my school and I want to embarrass my children, so.
Okay, so Mike's going,
I'll go.
go. I guess I go, but I think maybe we, you know, recognize that it isn't for the kids, it's more for the staff. And we greet the staff and we welcome them and, you know.
If it wouldn't be too much trouble for Randy to pull the administrators and say,
We are
Would they
happy.
like
Well, let me
to
throw
serve
another,
when they not,
let me
or-
throw another thing. I mean, I know, and it's maybe unique to me. I can't take off work on Tuesday the 3rd, or I just take the whole day
Okay.
off. I
Yeah.
can't, because I have no
You
son.
and you can't come late.
And so I have
Yeah.
one day I can do it, but, I mean, I would very gladly then go on Wednesday and Friday or something, you know, a
Right.
day that's not designated.
Right,
Yeah. But there are some that we
There's a
do.
couple
on
Yeah, there's,
Wednesdays.
there's 2 on Wednesday.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Which
you
would allow
can
me to
do
go to one
on
building.
Wednesday.
Mhm.
I think the only feedback you got when you set them up, Rebecca, was just to communicate to the board that it's a very busy day, particularly for the elementary principals, as they're moving people through buses and trying to track.
They also would love to see them, but it is a busy day, so just so they don't expect us to talk to them or whatever.
I've never had that expectation.
So that
I've never
was-
had that expectation,
So-
so.
They have everybody, okay.
And if we don't
So,
have a building covered, we don't have a building covered.
yeah, I guess if we can't do them all, we can't do them all.
Okay.
So let's continue the mission and at one of our,
Post retreats?
our board development or post retreat, we'll talk about it further. So that, yeah, let's just pass that around and Julie or whoever needs to. Okay. Consideration to adopt a Board of Education policy to appoint a non-voting student delegate. Mike kind of brought this to Randy and and I appreciate you doing that, getting this on the agenda. I know we've talked about it a little bit, so do you want to address that, Mike?
Sure. I guess it popped into my mind with a student putting something in the newspaper recently, and I know Anea Keenis, who's my neighbor, but was the student council rep last year, and I think the year before, had brought it up as an idea, I think in her last presentation in either April or May. So it came to my head, we hadn't talked about it over the summer. I wasn't here in July, but when I went back and checked in the meeting, we didn't do it then either. I looked at some other districts and their policies. I mean, Madison has this overtly long 3-page policy for how to impeach student reps and everything like that. I don't think we need anything that complicated. My understanding is that there's someone who is already kind of excited about it and doing it too. I don't know how detailed we'd want to word it, or even if we need a specific actual policy on it. It's obviously non-voting, but it would be the idea that there would be a student who's responsible to be here tell us student positions on things. I like having students here to give input during the school year, but they are generally just kind of telling us what's going on with clubs and sports in high school, not actually addressing the issues that we're dealing with here and giving us a student perspective. So that's why I asked to be added. Thanks, John, for doing that.
Thank you. Mark?
Historically, I remember, I don't know how far beyond this it went, but I do remember one of the Hominy boys was the student council rep to the board meetings. And that particular student was very interested in it. Eventually, I think it died because of how long it took and how little effect it was. But that doesn't mean it's not worth doing, as long as I would hate that we have to draft somebody to do it. I think the position should be open and available for when a student's interested. That's how I would like to, if we're going to do a policy, it should be something of that sort.
And could we even further that to looking through the agenda with that student in advance and saying, these are some areas where potentially we might like some input. And if it happens to be an agenda, you know, leave it up to them. You know, they may come every time and want to sit here and listen just because they're interested in politics or whatever. But I guess I'm sensitive to the amount of time that we take in discussions that may not have anything to do with them.
Is there a way that when they come and make their presentations, to Joan's point, you look through the agenda and say, okay, these are the topics that are coming up that students may be interested in and we'd like their input, and then have it presented at that time?
Oh, just like at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to do that possibly with our teacher rep. You know, at least discuss that option of, you know, if there's something on the agenda that we'd like some teacher feedback, but let them know in advance.
Right.
You know, they get the agenda in advance, kind of meet with them or have some type of discussion. So yeah, they can kind of give that input.
Then we can go back to student council president or whatever. And go ahead.
The problem is, they're not going to have time to go back if they get it the Thursday before the meeting. You know, I mean, so I think there has to be an opportunity for them to maybe come back the following meeting with a response to what was discussed, because at least for me, I get this agenda with all our things the Wednesday before, and how are they going to be able to get what they want from whom they need in 2 days?
So if they sit on the board, they're going to have that same 2 day,
Right.
two-day time frame.
Oh.
So, you know, it seems like it, you know, and even if we want to delay it till the next meeting so that they have a month to, you know, take a look at it. You know, it's the same thing.
I agree with what you're saying, getting the response. I just don't know how they can do it pre the meeting.
Well, if it's items that come through committee work, there's the potential that you would know what was going to be on the topic from committee work, so you would have a longer lens. And maybe, again, relying on administrative support, advanced thinking, that they know what topics are going to be bubbling up. In terms of what the student council reps give us, maybe it's just as easy as to add an item. Okay, what's the buzz? What are kids talking about, worried about, or concerned about? Not just asking that their report be more inclusive.
And we have actually asked that.
Yeah. But maybe if they knew that was going to be a common part of the practice, or maybe, you know, I'm not opposed to the student rep at all. I do think it would be amazing if you would find one that would be willing to
actually, I think there's one right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Our rep right now, who's going to be doing the meetings, has already
wants to kind of stay.
They'd stay there the whole night, I think.
But they
Okay,
have.
well, that's good. I think they did somewhat in the past, again, way a long time ago.
But to your point, though, you know, stuff coming out of committee is going to go to the board. Administration can go to that rep and say, hey, this is what's coming up.
We can just connect in with the rep.
Yeah,
if that's
connect
the
in
case.
with them.
Yeah, which gives them now a week or so before the agenda is put together to gather information. And I would assume that they're gonna gather their information either by just asking, you know, their close-knit friend, you know, the group of friends that they hang around with, or I don't know how active, you know, the student council meetings are.
Mhm.
You know, does the student body come and participate?
No.
You know, so, you know, you're gonna get, you know, a very narrow view,
You
I
will.
think.
It will be.
I think you're generally going to, and I'm just projecting here, you're probably going to get a student who may ask a few friends or may ask a few other council members or something for an opinion. But generally, I think they're going to try to hopefully represent just what they view as kind of the general tenor of the school. And then we got to weigh that. And that's part of what it is. But I think that I agree with you, Joe, and the individual who's looking to be our rep this year, I think will be very engaged.
He's eager.
He's eager, yeah. He
Well,
sought me
then
out
maybe
one
we
day.
just make
Yeah.
it a formal, some
Yeah.
type of informal invitation, and to the extent
Yeah.
that anyone wants to do that.
Well, and what Joan and I have done the last few years is we've taken the kids out for lunch before school starts to just talk about what the role of this rep is, and then we could have this conversation with them and kind of throw out, we could, I guess, looking for some feedback from you. I mean, my thought is we can throw out the idea of them providing some input during the report, or what's their feeling of staying longer throughout the meeting. I think that's going to ebb and flow throughout the year based on what their homework schedules are looking
Yeah.
like
And their other
and
responsibilities.
their other pieces. So if we can start that conversation there, and
And then likewise with the WTA reps, funnel the same information to them as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
Committee minutes could go out to them as soon as it's ready for board work, right? Which is oftentimes before the agenda's put out.
I mean, yeah, the
And I'm
agendas
just
are,
thinking of how to get the information in advance so there's meaningful dialogue coming in.
the agendas that go, when you receive them on Wednesday, the agenda's 95% set for that at the
Right.
previous Friday when we send it to the paper, so that it can be published. So I mean, that's available out there, and that's actually posted in board book, correct? As a notice.
But even in
When
terms,
when do we actually have a notice up for the board meeting, for the public that they could see what the
When we
agenda?
send it to the paper.
Right, so that's the Friday, that's 10 days
It's
before
not
the,
necessarily in board book, but it's publicly noticed.
Correct.
Yeah.
correct.
but then also the committee agendas, sometimes, I know they help me prepare. Maybe that's what we should be sending to the WTA reps so they can see, is there an item here that's germane to them? It
Right.
gives them time to look at it.
And I guess the piece that I would just question, Mark, is I certainly agree that there's a lot of things that our teachers have that as input pieces. We have 580 employees, 300 of which are teachers. So I do have other employee
Well,
groups too.
yeah,
So I mean,
yeah.
that's a piece from just a
You need to think about, I
logistical
guess,
aspect of how we want to do
articulate
that as well.
too. Right,
Because that's
you're right.
certainly a piece of feedback I get from all of our employees, is trying to be well-rounded, that we are an organization run by certainly a core business built
Well,
around
that's
teaching
a good
and
point.
learning, but also other employee groups.
Yep.
I guess from the student standpoint, you know, the committee can say, hey, we want some student input on that. They get you know, you can share that with the student rep and say, okay, you know, this is where the board needs, we give you a presentation, address that during your presentation so that we get that feedback. And then when it comes up to the agenda item, you know, we've got that feedback.
Is that kind of lead in the direction you're looking at, Mike? And I know that you've also talked just about a policy that kind of establishes that.
Sure, I mean, I brought it up kind of last minute, so there's nothing drafted and hasn't
No.
gone through policy yet. I mean, so there's lots of ways to do it that we can't do quickly. You
Right.
know, other districts provide some amount of credit for it because it is a time investment.
Right.
And I don't know if there's a way we could do that anytime quickly.
Mhm.
Do that too, but that's an option as well. We're concerned about incentivizing actually caring enough to show up and stay or do the work ahead of time. So
And we could think about some of those as we kind of enter this with our student to get some feedback from them
Yeah.
as far as what works, what doesn't. Does that work?
Yep.
So start off with Joan, you and I'll find a time to meet with the kids and talk to them. And we'll toss some of these ideas out and then move that forward in that direction, and then we can evaluate and see if there's any different model that we want to try, or if we want to actually go to the route of needing to write a policy, et cetera, that adopts that.
Well, and if not formalized credit, maybe at least service hours, you know,
Service
they're always
hours.
trying to collect service hours for,
Yep,
That's a good.
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
They get a lot of service hours.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yep, yep, absolutely.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Mike, for bringing that up and keeping that on the table.
We need a motion to table that for a later meeting, since it's keep it on the table.
Administrative report action items, starting with an addition of special ed para.
Yes, so in your packet, you will find a request from Kurt with regards to a request for additional paraeducators based on some needs of students that have moved in over the summer. As you've seen, we've added those at this time of the year, the last few years, certainly that articulate the correlation with the kids that are moving in so that we can fully access and be eligible for the transfer of service exemptions in the next school year. So the request is in front of you. We are looking for the 3 paraeducators as recommended by Kurt.
Can you identify what buildings they're going to, what building level we're looking at?
The 2 that I'm referencing, excuse me, in the second paragraph, would be Prairie Elementary School.
So last year, when we had some additional move-in with IEPs, there seemed to be a big disruption in their whole clustering model, and we had some classes that really bumped up over. I just want to be careful. You know, hiring a pair is great, and I know that that does some of it, but these kids are eventually going to fall into the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to be sensitive to what happened last year when we had some August move-ins and we kind of had that, so.
Yep, as these and other students have been moving in, I've been reminding the principals about that because they're all
Yes.
aware of that.
Yes.
And they are doing a much better job at not condensing.
Can I also ask a question about the clustering, just because of the issues we had last year? Do those classrooms start at a lower student-teacher ratio, or are they at the max like all the rest? And then we have a move-in and all of a
Yep.
sudden we have higher than desirable with more IEPs, which was, I believe, one of the big issues last year.
Yep. Again, Randy and I have talked to the principals about that they certainly have the principals have the ability to do that maybe one section would be 2 students less than everybody else. One of our challenges, and I'm not sure where, Steve, maybe you know where we are with, I know some of our buildings have already reached the maximum capacity for particular grades, which is actually one of the reasons why these students are attending Prairie, because they actually moved into the Arboretum area. Arboretum is full, so they had to go to a different elementary school, and then we work with Julie to identify which schools have the most space available to accommodate, and that's where they ended. So that's one of the challenges that we have, because there are other buildings that have reached maximum at other grade levels and are sending to
Yeah,
other
I guess I
buildings.
just have to be very cautious and sensitive to
Yep.
the debacle we got into last year.
So Joan, I would just like a little clarification when you're referring to the clustering. Does that mean clustering of kids with
IEP kids.
IEPs? And we attempt to cluster them
In one classroom with co-teaching, it's that co-teaching model. You cluster them with a special ed teacher with a regular ed teacher. But last year, we had definitely some issues, and it was at Prairie. Because we
We also do that with our English learners as well.
So Kurt, is there another one of those, is this another one of those areas, and, you know, way back, I thought we were doing that, and then I heard we were getting away from that, and now it sounds like we're back to it. Am I mistaken? Or have we always done that? This has always been our practice?
We've always done it to a degree. We've always done it to a degree.
But I don't think
One
we
of the things
did
that
the
Kurt-
co-teaching.
We did not do the
Oh,
co-teaching
that's not the
before.
What
That is
Kurt's-
new.
What
That
Kurt
is new.
has tried to do is try to line up special ed staff to be more specific to grade levels. So they weren't
Right.
bouncing between grade levels, and that they had more of a specific focus. So that's what Joan is talking about, is the co-teaching, co-planning model, where they're actually having a teacher and a special ed teacher responsible within a classroom, and you may cluster kids within there. What occurred last year was the class, we had a number of kids that moved in later in the summer.
In
many
one
with-
particular grade.
In one
It was
particular
really
grade.
one particular grade.
Second grade. And then those numbers went up, and that
Mhm.
caused some of the pieces. The other things that we're trying this year to help address things we learned from last year was you have I call it a floater teacher, but it's
Yep.
basically you have a special ed teacher who's able to be more of a support across all of the grade levels as opposed to assigned to one. So you've got both. You've got the co-teaching, co-planning, and then somebody who can also help address some of the behavior issues and any of the other issues that come up.
And last year, in fourth grade, not only were a group of special education teachers in one pair, the EL students were
Oh.
also in that same pair. And that is, my understanding is that is not happening
That's
this
right.
year.
I just have to, you know, because I have been approached by already a teacher who is at max and is clustering, and those things kind of break my heart, because that is really, we went down that path last year. Mark?
So, is it possible then that you've got the co-teaching room assigned, room or rooms set up, they could have a disproportionate number of special needs students in there because you have the resources to deal with them?
They won't, I guess it depends what you call disproportionate. They'll have more, but they won't be over, again, without having the numbers in front of me,
A third of the class,
They-
a quarter
they
of the
won't.
class?
No.
maybe
You're-
a quarter,
You're looking
won't
at
be a
3 to
third.
5 students.
Yes.
But
But 3 to
if-
5
That's-
high-need
that's a quarter.
students,
Yeah.
when you're at 22 and you're in those elementaries, I understand last year we had a kindergarten that bumped up to 23, and that was a clustered group. That just, those things we
Yeah.
have
Yep.
to stop.
I guess that's my question. So if you're at X number, new students could be put in there because we're not quite at the cap, which could just thin
Yes,
the class somewhat.
yes. So you,
I know in the particular case of the students in this memo, they're not being put in the same they're not being put in the same team. They're in different teams.
Okay.
But, and principals are doing where they may be spreading the kids out more, but then for the literacy blocks, some of them from here may be coming over here for the literacy block, but then going
moving
back.
So one of the things Joan asked me about today was a breakdown on all the class sizes by section. So I've asked Julie to put that together, and Rebecca's making sure. It's this time of the year as we start having, it's a bit fluid with kids moving in and out. So but I'll share that with everybody so you can get a picture of what it is.
And could you also share the number of IEP kids in those sections that they
I can
exist?
see if I can
If we
find that.
could, I
would.
Are all the IEP kids in clusters or some they're spread out?
There's some that are not in, there are some that are like onesies or, yeah.
But then they don't
Not
have
all.
the co-teaming, then the floater works with them if they need.
Depends on the building. It depends on the building.
Do you have case managers along with co-teachers?
Yes.
So they're responsible. So
Yes.
some special ed teachers have kids all over the place.
Usually only in one grade,
One
but they may be in multiple homerooms at a
Mhm.
particular grade
Okay.
level.
Right.
Kurt, which grades are full and over in?
Third is, I know third grade is, I don't know if there are any other ones, I know third grade is.
When you say full, what is full?
It's at its there.
No,
it's at
but I
the
mean, is it
maximum
23?
level. Third grade would be 25,
24.
right?
Is that elementary all over?
No.
No.
It's different.
22.
Yeah,
It's 24,
it's
isn't it?
22 up to second, K1 and 2.
And then it goes
Mark.
up to 20.
I don't know what the answer is, Kurt, because I can remember being in another elementary other than PES a couple of years ago for the teacher board discussions, and one particular elementary school felt like they were the dumping ground because all the new kids kept coming in there, and of course, it's based on your enrollments, you know, and so that year it might have been Arboretum, this year is Prairie, but I guess my concern is how do we, perception becomes a reality, so somehow, I don't know how we assuage that piece that feels like a you know, kind of a crisis situation at times in that particular kind of building where all of a sudden they're getting all the new kids and with specialized needs or not specialized needs, but the numbers keep going up to the maximum number.
One of the things that
Yeah,
you'll
I
see.
don't-
I don't know if there's an answer to that.
I don't put kids in buildings. It's where's the regular ed space. It's
Right.
not where's the special ed space. It
Yeah.
never is. Julie will ask me, where should this student go? And I said, well, where do you have regular ed space?
Exactly.
So
No,
that's
yeah,
where the
that's
kids
the
go.
answer.
Right.
Right,
And then
right.
we provide the special ed services wherever there's regular
And that
ed
piece I
space.
get,
So
but
this
it-
isn't a special ed.
No.
Moving kids
All new
around
kids are
for
going into
special
that
ed.
school,
It's a where's the
regardless of their
regular ed.
needs, right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Kurt and I'll roundabout about the numbers that you're asking for. We'll break it out by IEPs. We've had conversations with the building administration about the clustering piece that we've discussed, that as Joan brought up. The other piece that is just a kind of a factor of growth is, because when we look at the second grade last year, we were at second grade at a max or above in every single classroom in every single school. So it's when you get to a factor of that, and that becomes more of a trend based on us having continued growth. Trying to bring those down across the board happens when you totally redistrict, as opposed to, because you're going to have to, because adding a section somewhere just drops it in one building. And then you have a disproportionate sizes. You're still going to be at a max here, or you're transporting and moving kids around to many, many different schools. So it's really a factor that, as far as how, if we want to bring those down across the board to below our max, and not all of our classes are at the max level, some do hit that, then it's a matter of having to do something system-wise
Right.
to change that. Some of that is going to come when the subdivision that Steve and I are watching that's going to probably push us to that is when the Hogan Road development starts to grow at a much rapid rate, because that's a walkable distance to Arboretum, where you don't have the space to be able to accommodate that level of growth. So trying to, other than moving people around through shuttles and moving them from building to balance class sizes, which is what we're doing now, the system to really do it is to redistrict. And that has to come at a point when I think we have down to that tipping point, which comes with some of the continued growth. But we'll get you the numbers as far as what you're asking for, so you can see it in paper, realizing it'll shift between the first day of school. And I can keep sending you those on a weekly basis if you'd like to see them.
So well, if we get to that later, I guess.
related to that, you were gonna come back to us on open enrollment numbers too somehow for 4K? And I'm presuming since you didn't come back to us, we've decided we do want to hold on those spaces and not increase them.
Well, we also found that per DPI, we're not allowed to increase, even if we have space, which we do, we weren't allowed to go above those numbers
That we set in January.
that we set in January.
Right.
So that was a piece that we asked DPI, and I asked the attorneys at my law conference about, can you go, so we set them at 28,
Yeah.
based on where we saw our enrollment numbers.
Right.
We had, I don't know, 8, 10 kids that were on a waiting list that were beyond that didn't get in. Could we add those? And the piece that we learned was even if you had space, so you didn't hit your enrollment projection, but you already filled your 28 spots, you couldn't go any deeper.
Okay.
So we couldn't pull them off. So that's why you didn't see it, was because we weren't allowed to do it.
Thank you, Kurt, for the extra information, and I hate to harp on it, but I
No,
don't want
that
to
was
lose
no.
sight of
We had a
where
lot
we
of
were last
conversations
year.
about what happened
We did.
last year, and we do not
Okay.
want to repeat that.
Thank you. But we do need a motion to approve the paras, which it sounds like we definitely need.
Move approval of the paras as recommended by administration, the
Second.
3 special ed paras.
Second by Jack. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Kurt.
Kurt.
Next, we have the staff handbooks from each building. They were in our extra tab. That was a lot of reading.
Yeah.
Did you read them all?
Nope, I gave up.
Yeah.
But I
you tried.
skimmed them all.
Oh,
And I
man.
read the highlights, and I
Yes.
appreciate Prairie highlighting in yellow because that one was so easy to do. So, but anyway, we do need approval of all the staff
And
handbooks.
the K4 ones are pretty much lockstep, very
Yeah,
closely
they-
together, so they come together on those.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion on the staff handbooks? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Announcements and correspondence.
Only announcement I'm going to make, because I just don't have a better spot to do this. There's a couple items that came across my desk today that were not noticed on our agenda. I'm not asking for them to have approval on them, but as I go through and do some investigation into them, it may require us to either take action on them in September, or if there was a need potentially to come together before then. They're just a couple part-time open enrollment requests that came, really what I would say, one is certainly late in the process and outside of our timelines, and another one that came that might be timely, but it also has some nuances to it that I have to investigate and take a look into, but that one came on my desk later this afternoon. So just as a kind of an FYI, and we are taking a look at a few of these things, they do need board action. If there was a direction for us to go, they are kids who are looking to participate in curricular activities that would start in the fall. But one of them, I think, is outside of timelines, and the other one has a lot of question marks I need to answer before I'm ready to put it forward. And they weren't noticed on tonight's agenda, so it's just kind of a nuance of our work.
They're out of the timeline.
There's a 6-week there's a timeline where you have to request it 6 weeks prior.
So one is
One is,
kind of.
Too late.
the other one has some other nuances with private school and some other things that I need to look into. And one has an IEP associated with it, which we haven't had a chance to look at. So
Okay.
I just wanted to give you a heads up. These may be things that you might not see, and I may just deny them at our level based on that. But if they are things that have to come forward, I wanted to give you a heads up.
Okay. Moving on to committee reports. The first one is the special meeting we had planning the retreat. We met with Heather a lot during lunch, and basically the minutes were in there pretty briefly. Next is the facility committee, and they usually report. So
And I'll take this. There's 2 items on here that we're looking for some feedback on. And they're both with relation to the the old public library building, across from the high school. I have 2 agenda items on here that the committee discussed, and both of them were felt that it was best to have a broader discussion around this table. The first one is really with regards to the deed review of the parking on the south side of the building. So the parking on that's by the old library building, that's articulated in the design that's in your packet. That was per the deed, was something that used to be owned by the district, and that through an agreement with the village was deeded to them. Had language in there that was with respect to it being staying with the municipality as long as that building was used for municipal purposes. Now, certainly, if there were ever to be a sale of that to a private entity, the language, which is what I received a legal opinion on as well, we would have the option for that to revert back to us with some process for quitclaim deeds and some of those type of things. From my perspective, I think it's just fair that we have a discussion around this table to see really what is our position on that, so that we could communicate that to the village as far as this is the status as it's been brought to our awareness, and if they were to sell it in a different direction, really what's our position on it. Now, I know that there has been some conversation from the village in recent weeks, and I believe that there'll be some exploratory conversations about do they have other municipal uses for that they might explore. I think that's possible as well, so this may be a moot issue for us. But in an effort just to be as transparent and communicative with the village, I was hoping just to have a conversation, if we're able to determine, do we have a position on that? And then at some point, I'd like to put that in writing to the village of where we stand, so that we could do that. And I could bring that correspondence back at a future meeting for you to take a look at, and then we could send it collectively.
Just for information, how many spots are we talking about?
Can you pull it up? Rebecca, do you have that on there?
I think so.
Scroll down.
It's basically that line of parking.
17?
Okay.
Something like that. But that's generally the picture that you're looking at.
Right.
I mean, this is what Todd Schmidt shared with me, so I could share with you with regards to what they found in their deed discovery. I just had our attorneys check on it to make sure that this reads, and I could advise you accordingly. I think it's just a piece that if we had a position on it, and I think the facilities committee and other members who were part of that would view, if this did go to a private sale, there would be a high likelihood that we would want those spaces back, given that we are a growing high school and can certainly use those, particularly as we look at parking during the day and then certainly events. But the purpose for this agenda item was to really get other perspectives around the table.
I guess I would just clarify that the way the current deed is written with that restriction makes sense to me, and sharing it for something like a library or for some other municipal purpose that would be attracting a lot of cars, like business would, I would be amenable to continuing that type of agreement. I agree with you. I don't think we're really interested in selling or otherwise dispersing shared access to that part of the high school parking.
Is there any concern from a safety perspective because of the potential increased traffic? A library during the course of the day is a low volume typically because of the workforce, the kids not being there. But if this were to become a municipal function, you could expect maybe a significant increase of traffic. And so would we have to look at, is that a concern?
I don't think so. When I look at the traffic that takes place at like a village hall, et cetera, I don't see that as any greater or less in their meetings.
Just on court night.
Yeah, I think they have evening type events probably.
Yeah,
that
it doesn't
bring
seem
some.
like there's a lot of traffic going to the municipal
Okay.
From a municipal perspective, I mean, the deed's pretty clear that if it's for municipal purposes, it stays with them. And I think if that were the case, I think the use in a similar manner to how it is makes sense.
Sure, sure.
If certainly if it's a private sale for something other than that, that's really where this piece kicks in.
Well, a question I was thinking, would it possibly be worthwhile, and I don't know we even could, have a different way of entering? Obviously, there'd be a cost to doing that, but it's just, if it's not a concern, that's fine.
I guess the discussion too at the community level was if they did sell it to a business, we'd close off that road as well. You know, because you have,
At the end of that parking lot.
yeah, we close off that, because you don't want a lot of business traffic going through a parking lot.
Yeah.
And without that, it's inaccessible without driving through high school's parking lot.
Yeah, I would close it the other way.
Is there other designated parking for that building? Is that first row where that car is parked?
It's
Does
on the
that-
other side of the building. You know,
It's
if you
behind
come
the
in,
building.
Just
Yes.
the underneath
if you
part?
come back,
In
So
the back.
there's no top?
But not this to the right side. Nothing on
There's
the,
nothing,
Nothing.
there's
On South
nothing
Street.
here, Joe. This
There's
is-
no, all
So
school
when
parking?
I go to the library, when I park here, I actually park in the high school park.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just in the back, that's the only parking that
That's
you
right,
have.
Okay.
that's right.
And I suppose what they could do is, you know, they could put a turnaround up there, you know, to get that, if they
Sure.
need it in current configuration. I guess the other thing you want to, you know, obviously clarify that even if they keep it and they rent it to a business.
The leasing piece is ambiguous, that would require some
Yeah.
further work. If they were to keep it as a municipally owned building but lease it,
Right.
how does that play into the spirit of the deed and what the language is? That was articulated by the attorney who did the review.
Right.
So I would articulate that we'd assume that if you lease it to a business, it's for business purpose, not municipal purpose.
It'd have to be rezoned too, because right now it's zoned just for government only.
I'm sorry to hear.
I think they'd have to rezone it. You can't just put like a, convenience store in it for how it's zoned right now either.
But I think with the village, you have to make sure that our points are clear.
Right, right.
Don't say it.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that piece?
do we need a vote on that? Or
I don't think so.
you
What
got
I'd
a
like to do
sense
is I'd
where
like
we're
to
at?
actually put it to writing so you can see what I write, and then we can send it off. I'll bring it back at the next meeting, if that's fine with the board. That way you can see exactly what you're, see if I articulate it correctly based on your input. Okay. The second item we discussed is very much related, and this is really a follow-up from the tour that we had of the library facility, the old library facility. And really the question that this fits in very similarly to really wanting to give the village some idea of where we sit with this property. I think that there's been speculation as are we interested or are we not? And then what are some of the conditions that might fit where that timing wise as far as if there is an interest, what needs to occur. What I shared with the facilities committee was regardless of the cost of what it would be to purchase the property, absorbing another property in from an operational standpoint is going to take extra dollars. So the heating, the cooling, the maintenance, all of those pieces. So from my perspective, that's not something that we readily have within our current budget setting. So to me, if that were to be a piece that we were interested in, the timing would need to be tied into a level of a referendum effort so that we had the dollars to operate a facility. Similarly to when we brought on other facilities or have added on facilities, we've added additional costs into the referendums to accomplish the operational piece. So to me, that's an important piece so we don't pull dollars away from other parts of what we already have planned for the school district. But the second question, the real main question is, as we've kind of looked at our long-range facility plan, and as we've looked at touring the library, really where do we see this as
this falling within those plans. And really, the committee wanted to open this up for discussion. And I think there's certainly some gradation in where your answers can be. Certainly it can be a no, we don't have an interest because that hasn't fallen within our long-range plan. It could be certainly we're interested because it's an opportunity. That's something that we didn't have as part of that vision. Or it could be a piece that's somewhere in the middle that's stating that we are still in the investigatory stage of our facilities needs per referendum planning and over the next number of months. And we still need to really determine, does this have a place, particularly as we look programmatically around the district of where we want certain entities and things to go. So those were really the general gist of what we discussed at the committee level, but the committee was very interested in, again, what the input was around the table from the full board. And my hope would be that if I would be writing something to the board with regards to the parking lot issue we just got done talking about, I'd also like to at least include generally what's our position or belief or status with the whole current library site as well. Did I articulate that clearly from our committee? Any other committee members?
Did the facility committee have a perspective that they wanted to share?
Probably not a coherent one. That's fair, right?
Well, I think some on the committee wanted to look at it and see if the price would come down and you could pick it up, and others said no. You know, because we're picking up an old building, we're picking up maintenance. You know, we already have maintenance challenges. You know, we're deferring maintenance on our existing buildings. We're going to go to a referendum with a new middle school, which opens up the old middle school for something, which is already set up for, if you want, alternative school or offices. You know, everything is there. Wellness clinic, you could probably put the wellness clinic in the office area, so people coming in and out, you've got that parking in front that you could reserve, for that activity if you wanted. And operationally, you've got another building that you have to staff and take care of, and it doesn't make sense. If we had a lot of extra, if we didn't have the space, then you'd say, yeah, that probably makes sense. But given the fact that we're building new, we're building maintenance funds into our referendum so that we can keep our properties up, it doesn't seem to fit the operational needs of, at this point.
And I guess I don't really disagree. I mean, my perspective on it was it's very difficult to come up with a response to the question of, are you interested in this property when, one, we have absolutely no idea what the village actually wants to sell it for. The numbers changed dramatically over the course of the last year. It's frustrating to hear some of the village say the district at best is being wishy-washy when we don't even know what the price is. It's very difficult to respond to that, and we don't even know what they're trying to sell it for. So there are benefits, there's costs to it too, but I think it's well said that we have a big property sitting very close to it that we don't know what we're going to do with that either. So.
And I think if we don't have a good plan for what are we going to use with the old middle school, we can't mothball it until the high school needs that space. I think the referendum is doomed, so to add another property, that we really don't have a plan for, it doesn't make sense.
So just to kind of lay out kind of what the timeline looks at some of this facility planning, one of the pieces that you'll be seeing as we move probably into the later parts of fall is starting to define what, if we build a new middle school, how does the current middle school site get incorporated with high school programs and other district programs. So that's the piece that we will need to be bringing back to you and bringing you some options and talking to you about a lot of the things that were shared. I mean, where do we have alternative ed? Where do we place some of our transition program students? Where do we do different office space pieces? And where do we expand other programs, wellness clinic included? Where do we see that? I think those are pieces that are still forthcoming in the discussion. And that's a piece we can't answer right now, as all of these pieces are going in these numbered locations. So how would you use the parent libraries? I mean, that's really the situation we're sitting in.
Do I hear people saying we don't want it?
I guess the way I would articulate it is the location makes it difficult to want to dismiss out of hand, but on the other hand, it's far from a dream property, even when we're considering what the options of price and how we could possibly use it. Whatever the village could possibly sell it for, we would need to dump extra dollars into retrofitting it and making it fit whatever our dream was. It does seem likely we've got other spaces that would be easier for us to work with.
I think when you go to referendum, you can build the space that meets
The needs.
And we're not shoehorning something that we got a cheap price.
The other attractive part to wanting to keep it on the table is that way you do control the destiny of who's occupying that building. So, you know, the minute we say we're absolutely no way interested, then we have to be willing to deal with
But is that
however
what they're
that
calling us
space.
wishy-washy about?
No.
Well,
You can't control your
No,
neighbors.
you can't.
know?
You can't control your neighbors.
You can't tell
No.
your neighbor, I want to interview him before.
I get it.
Before you sell.
You're absolutely right.
You know,
That's
and,
right.
You know, if it becomes a problem, you put a fence up.
Yeah, that's right.
You know.
Mark?
I'm personally opposed to the purchase.
Yeah.
For basically all the reasons already given, but we don't know the cost. We clearly don't know the cost of retrofitting,
Yes.
and I hate the term retrofitting on a new building.
Yeah.
We're purchasing something, we're going to retrofit it, and we don't know to what. We've already articulated the concern for how the middle school is going to adapt to the high school,
Yeah.
but we also have another educational facility just down the street that we are continuing to expand
Yeah.
for extended classrooms.
Yeah.
And we're retrofitting a 1930, 50, 60 building to make it as contemporary as possible. But if we were actually looking for this new building that we have yet to acquire, that we're going to have to retrofit for some other educational purposes, is that an ideal situation for our kids and for our constituents if we don't know the cost for the retrofit?
Right, right.
And it's to me, it's just
It makes it
poor
less
time.
attractive. Yeah.
Interesting opportunity, but it's just not the right time, and the costs just don't seem to justify it from my perspective. The last piece is I experienced the old new high school that was the open concept that then got closed up into individual classrooms, and it created about 15 years of ventilation heating issues because it wasn't designed for that. And we have a beautiful open concept on the upper level. But how are you going to retrofit that in an efficient, efficient way for use, efficient for cost, when it's not designed for that kind, it's not designed for anything but open air flow. That's what it was designed for.
Yeah.
And so for all those reasons, I just think it's the wrong time, the wrong amount of money, and we're trying to fit something that isn't in our plan.
Yeah.
I agree. The location's great, but
Yeah.
it's not in our long-range plan.
Is this up for a motion or what?
I'm just gathering some information today, and what I'll do is take really what I'm hearing from around the table, and I wanted to just put that in writing to bring back to you to see if that clearly articulates what I heard from you, if that's fair enough for the board members.
So one of the things, Chris Zellner, I read, I think in the paper where we were wishy-washy and so forth, I think a year ago when they came to us on this same topic, you know, we said no, we don't want it. And then they came back to us and said, well, geez, can you reconsider?
So what's really brought it back on the table is particularly as the new library has become situated and opening, there's been conversations community-wise, and I think that there's people who are expecting.
Mhm.
I mean, Julie, you and I had a
That's
conversation
true.
one day that we're just expecting, well, of course, this will go to the school.
Mhm.
And that was part of where I brought it back here and started to had the conversation with the village to really clarify where are they at, what's their position, what's happening with the space. And that's what's led us here. So I think partially was to try to be forthright to answer at some point community that's wondering where is this position, where is it going, and some who are projecting that it would naturally just go to the school. And I think part of what we've had to do is reflect on, does that fit within our plan? And I think that's what we've done over the last, at least.
Is there any chance they would give it to us?
Well, I mean, that was my next question. It's like, I mean, that becomes a whole different thing that would give us a lot more flexibility if,
I'm not sure that they would, because
They need money too.
they need money as well. You know, they've got a price tag on that building, so they're gonna sell it to pay off the loans for the new, or
So we don't have to anticipate, we just need to respond.
All I want to do is I'm just trying to be communicative with the village about what
Yeah.
our position
and
is.
it's good we've clarified the deed restriction and
Yeah.
So I
that
wanted
position
to, I started with the deed, and then I think the next part was after our tour to have some reflection back here. And then what I will do is take what I've heard here tonight, and I will reflect that in a letter that we can send to the village. That just puts it in writing, really with what our position is. I think the last thing I would add was certainly if there were options here that change down the road, we certainly want to be part of that conversation, I think. So you don't want to totally shut that off, but I think generally what I'm hearing is very clearly on kind of where we sit with the deed piece. And generally, what I'm hearing around the table is that at this point, we don't see the current library site as being in our immediate planning needs. But certainly be open to things if things changed in the future.
like what? If
Well,
things change in the
I think
future,
if
like
the thing
what?
that changes in the future is if they give it to you, then do you own it? That's a different question.
Or give us any definitive price whatsoever to actually consider. And Judy, to answer your question, I think the reason is that there's probably a reluctance to do that is because I think if they don't sell it, it blows a hole in the budget for the new library. Because they were expecting to sell it.
yeah, they've gotten lots of, the public has stepped up to the plate really, really well on the public
Yeah.
library. So, you know, anything we can do to collaborate in terms of what makes sense for both of us, Randy, we're definitely interested in continuing to do. So what are their dreams and thoughts in ways that the building could be used that would help both of us? Because
You know
I
what
think
would-
there's possibilities that
What
way.
would help both of us is they moved the municipal building, their municipal offices in that building,
Uh-huh.
you know, because it's bigger than what they've got already. Turn that, you know, current facility into private space.
Something else.
And
Yeah.
now it's on the tax rolls, and it makes sense because it's in a shopping area. And that would help both of us.
Could I
suggest
suggest
we do that?
we let them plan that?
That's exactly right.
But let me articulate what I think I've heard here. Bring it back, we can wordsmith it if there's some things that aren't, but I want it to represent kind of the voice we have here. I think then you can put a vote to that as your position moving forward, so that it's actually in writing for something to respond to.
But I think the reason I brought that up is I want to clarify it, you know, so that
We're not wishy-washy.
we're not wishy-washy. You know, this is our position.
Well, with all due respect, I think that the wishy-washy was a paraphrase, not a direct quote. But, in fact, I know it was, but I think the concern is that even tonight, we're saying, well, we really don't want it, but we're not going to vote to say no. And does that send a mixed metaphor, mixed message? Why would we be opposed to saying no tonight as opposed to a month from tonight? What are we going to know differently about how we feel about it?
Right.
Well, how can we
And I
say
agree with you.
yes when we
And I think they
agree.
want to move on.
Yeah, they want to move on.
They
Let's
should
give them the
feel free to move
opportunity to move on.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think we've articulated why it's not a good action of the board, of the school district to take the building over.
Randy, go ahead, draft it.
Draft it and bring it back.
I will
I
draft
think
it,
it
bring
should
it
be a
back,
harder
and-
no
and I
than
will
the-
put
yeah.
in that- I think I got that message in the last sentence here, so
Okay.
Thanks,
Really
Mark.
leaning towards
A
that.
little harder no than,
I wrote
than a
down,
maybe.
I got the language.
Maybe no
I
or
got
no.
it.
Yeah, take out the baby.
I got it.
Okay.
Remove the gray. Thank you.
We still have a few more facilities. You're still on here, Randy.
I know.
Soccer.
Thanks. All right.
I thought the staff for the handbooks were long.
I love this piece.
Facility, they have been so busy.
All right. Oh, that's right. These were part of facilities. All right. The second part we have here is the field design for the soccer stadium. One of the things that we've taken a look at is our timeline with regards to the soccer field project, and not only in relation to the fundraising group that's looking at the turf field, but also given the report we received from Rutler with regards to the condition of our field. The conversation we had around the facilities committee table was to position us to be able to make really decisions to move any project forward, if that's really what we would choose to do. For example, if there was no fundraising group, would we be considering a action on that field with relation to like a grass field or a replacement? To do that, we need to have some design work done. So what we are asking for, and what we asked the facilities committee, is to give us the green light to move ahead with Rutler to do the field design, with the base being a grass field and then an alternate being the cost for the turf field, so that we have both costs in front of us. This allows us to move the project forward, the fundraising group to do the work that they need, and then we would be making a decision probably this spring with regards to a direction that we would potentially go through the whole bidding process this winter to get more hard numbers. But the first step is really moving ahead with the field design piece, which is essential no matter what direction this project goes. So the facilities committee did approve that, to recommend that to the full board tonight. So that's what the first item is.
So we need a motion for that.
Before the motion, I just had a question. So the cost of that study would be recouped from the actual project itself, or is it actual in the budget?
I think it's a percentage piece that's within the budget for the project.
Okay. I so move we approve the design.
Second.
Any discussion in that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
The second item is the building design piece, and I know I see Dave is in the audience tonight. The fundraising group has come to us, and you'll see the email that's attached from Dave Kettner and from the One Community, One Goal Committee. What they are looking for is, again, in a very similar vein to what we just talked about with the field design, they're looking to do the same type of work with regards to that team center. They would like to get permission from the board and action from the board to move ahead with designing the team center so that they can be prepared to, again, move that out to bids. They understand that any of the design costs or anything associated with the building and this part of what we're approving this evening would be at their cost. So again, the facilities committee reviewed this item and approved it and to forward it to the board this evening.
So I would be looking for a motion for that as well.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or concerns about that?
I guess one of the things that came up, or a question that came up at the facility committee is they go through the design, they understand what the cost is, they want to move forward, you know, when can they move forward? You know, is it when they get the money in the bank that they can pay for it? Or, you know, are we as a board or a district going to be, you know, the bank to help them out? You know, that was a discussion at the, you know, because you get pledges, and those pledges are multi-year. You know, are we going to support them with a loan or whatever? You know, do we want to be in that position? You know, that was a discussion I think that
You know, the conversation has also continued on with the budget committee with some conversations with regards to that. And certainly the piece that would have to be considered as this piece moves forward, particularly with the team center, is, and I think this is what we shared at the committee as well, is our focus right now would be on the field. You know, it's certainly the one that's been articulated as having the highest need, so that's a piece that, as far as our energy is looking at, from a district, that's a priority. But certainly there's a piece out here as well of the team center, of which I believe the belief would be that would be on the responsibility of the fundraising group and that third entity to really pay for it. And I believe that from some of their reports that they've shared is that they have many of those dollars in hand to accomplish the team center. And I think the big question that you're also bringing up here, Jack, is with regards to kind of that whole field financing as that moves forward. So I think that's a piece that we'll continue to talk about. I know it started off with the budget committee as part of their dialogue at their last meeting.
But that's not part of what they're asking for,
That's
right?
not what they're
I
asking for.
appreciate you bringing that
Yeah.
up, but yeah,
No,
so,
that's not what
and
they're
we
asking
can't
for.
really, you know, we don't even know the extent of what they need until they do the design, so.
Right.
No. So
Did you have another?
I think
comment?
that you hit the nail on the head. I think that's a legitimate concern, but to me, that looks like it's a couple months down the road
Right.
yet
We
till,
need to get the
Right.
design
till the
and
design
cost.
comes out. They'll have more sense of where they're at financially
Correct.
Right.
to allow us to make that decision.
that's right. Yeah. So this is just simply for them to move ahead with the design of the team building at their cost.
So there's motion on the table. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And that is the end of facility. Moving on to budget. Mark Steve team.
Steve, I'll let you articulate.
I'll start with just discussing a couple items that aren't action items this evening. First of all, to connect with what Jack just mentioned, at the budget committee level, we have been having discussions about the financial plan regarding the soccer stadium. So we are continuing to have that dialogue at the budget committee meeting. And at some point in the near future, we need to bring together the conversations that the budget committee has been having on this and the facility is having. As you pointed out correctly, Joan, it's a little bit further away from the design piece and it's a little different discussion, but it's a discussion that really needs to come together because there were a number of factors on Warrior Stadium that have to be determined for this project as well. And the sooner we do that, the better we would be for the sake of this overall project. So we did talk about that at the budget committee meeting. There is not an action item associated with that tonight. We also did talk about a couple other topics. One was the district offering credit card payments through the Infinite Campus system. The budget committee was supportive of moving forward with that effort to allow an additional alternative for parents to pay their fees. So we will be implementing that. We also talked about the copy proposal to replace equipment. The committee was supportive of moving ahead with an equipment replacement as we have done in the past. There's no action on that. So then the one action item.
Just a point on that was with the pilot, they normally set it up in the summer. And so once the administration and staff get together with the Ryan people, they'll discuss when they're going to do the pilot so that they can then implement it next summer. If that's the way that we want to go.
But
So next year, so this year's the money was allocated, there's 50 to 60,000 for printer replacement. That would have been the cost to implement the paper saving proposal. We're going to do the printer replacement this year and potentially use that money next year to implement the paper saving plan if the pilot is successful.
Correct. Okay. So are those actionable items from us?
They're not.
No, they're not. Okay.
So if I could talk a little bit about the action item this evening. So you do see consideration of the fourth draft of the budget. So just as a reminder, we typically have 3 drafts of the budget. The third draft is approved in July and brought forward to the community at the annual meeting in October. The Budget Committee recommended a change this year because, as you know, the governor approved the state budget with some vetoes prior to us being able to make an adjustment in our budget, which was presented at the July meeting. So as a result, in front of you this evening, you see a fourth draft of the budget. If the board approves that tonight, this budget would then be brought forward to the public at the annual meeting in October. The changes between the third draft and the fourth draft were articulated in your notes and board book, but I'm just going to cover them at a high level. First of all, based on the final 2019-21 state budget, changes were made to state equalization aid, property taxes, the school mental health grant, the state special education categorical aid, and the per pupil categorical aid, all to match the final 2019-2021 state budget. We did talk about this at the July board meeting, how the vetoes from the governor were very positive for public schools and how the funding was increased beyond what we were projecting in our budget. So it was a very positive situation. The second thing, the board made a motion several months ago to move the communications director position from a 0.5 FTE to 1.0 FTE if funding became available. We did talk about that at the budget committee meeting. The budget committee did want to have a conversation with the entire board tonight about that. The federal grant allocations for the 2 of the grants have become available to us between the July and the August board meeting. And then the additions to the expenditure budget. These were all items that the budget committee has been talking about for the last couple of months. The social worker, as an example, I want to highlight that position. The addition of a 1.0 social worker is our reaction to the state mental health grant being doubled from $3 million to $6 million. The budget committee, being proactive, authorized administration to put a posting out there immediately. We put the posting out, we went through the process, and were able to hire a 1.0 social worker. As a result of our, I would say, very quick action on that, our district will be able to gain a larger share of that grant, going from $3 million to $6 million. And I would expect that there's not too many school districts in Wisconsin who've reacted that quickly to the fact that we were looking at that school mental health grant. And so I think that is something that we feel very positively that the budget committee worked with administration to be able to put that in place in such a timely manner. The communications director is referenced. The middle school guidance admin assistant position, adding 1 hour per day, allows full coverage while students are in the building. That had been a budget request. The summer school admin assistant going to full-time dedication to the summer school program. An increase to the mentor program due to changes in the state requirements. Increases in the capital projects budget for the field house scoreboard, which was discussed at the board level last month. Adding a budget for a payment to the village of Waunakee for Rip Park. So we have budgeted now for our payment for Rip Park rather than waiting till the end of the year and seeing what funds become available. The board will certainly still have the right, if you choose to pay more, but at a minimum, we now have the payment covered. And then removing all personnel costs from the CEIS grant. Kurt Ely attended the budget committee meeting and went through that discussion with the committee. And then the remaining funds were added to the salary line for future discussion later in the budget process. In our process in the past, that has typically occurred during the months of October or early November. So those are the changes that we've made between the third draft and the fourth draft. The budget committee did recommend a motion to move that forward tonight on a 3-0 vote, but did request discussion on the topic of the communications director. As an example, when might that position be posted? So Mark, anything to add?
The communication position, Randy has talked about possibly postponing the hiring of that till January, to post it before, but hire in January. We didn't vote on it, but I think we're in agreement that this would allow the budget some flexibility of about $30,000 to $40,000. There are some uncertain expenses still that we're looking at. We don't know the student numbers until the third Friday. And so it would just provide some flexibility in budgeting if we could allow Randy that flexibility to fill that position as of January 1 versus now, and then going forward to be the full-time position. Just give us a little breathing room with our budget.
It would allow you to fund it at a half-time position
Right.
and have a full-time position just hired in the middle of the year.
I appreciate that a lot, because I feel that's what we presented to the buildings, that it was going to be a half-time, and I do appreciate that there are more funds. It's great to see there are more funds added to the salary line, but I just, there are a lot of needs out there. There are a lot of very high classes. I appreciate postponing it till January.
I think that especially makes sense. I felt better about it with Randy's board update saying that he still is interested in the shorter term, finding someone to
Yes.
contract to upgrade the website, because that particular project,
That's
I
right
think
away.
we should jump on.
And I do agree that I think posting a full-time position, you'll get a better person than a half-time position, and it still keeps it in the narrative of what we describe to the staff. Great.
The other piece, just Steve mentioned the tennis court payment. We had allocated that out of the contingency fund, and I feel very comfortable that we're not borrowing from it before it's a reality. So we have the entire contingency fund available for the unforeseen. We can always redirect that at the end of the year if monies are available towards more of our cost to the tennis court.
I have to just comment that on a walk I had last night, I went up and they happened to have a door open. I stepped out onto those courts and the flexibility. They have done such a super job revitalizing and surfacing. That is, and adding the bleachers, that is a wonderful, wonderful facility. It's a great partnership, and I know that, there's dialogue not only about, tennis, but we need to dialogue about other partnerships, but this one is beautiful.
Let me put my 2 cents in. One, I see personal computer grant went from 40 to 0. What is that?
So, in the governor's vetoes, he removed the personal computing grant. The personal computing grant was the grant that provided funding for Chromebooks for 9th graders. So that source of funding was eliminated. So correspondingly, the technology budget was dropped by the same dollar amount.
So how do we replace the Chromebooks then? Because how do we get the new ones now? Because we bought those based on state budget, right?
It'll require a reallocation within the technology department to buy fewer of non-Chromebook related items. So that is a budget that had the flexibility to do that. That's the positive. When we have seen the long-term financial plans for technology in the past, there were dollar amounts that were available each year. It was not budgeted to a full extent where the remaining balance was zero. So there was an ability to do that. Were the funds helpful to the technology budget? Yes, of course. But they've been removed, and so the Chromebook plan remains. It just doesn't have the funding for the 9th graders.
The other thing, again, I don't want to be the communications director. You know, I've made my statement on that. I think I can bend to a halftime position, but you know, I have a challenge going full time.
Are we ready to vote on the form?
I guess I just have one question, Steve. Could, on your line about personnel budget, including salary increases of 3.3%, can you just speak to what exactly that means? Because I know that's not necessarily exactly what increases would be. I know it's a combination of CPI plus points. Can you briefly explain that?
Sure, absolutely. So what has been in the budget prior to this change, which added some additional funds into the salary line, was a increase that basically matched last year. So the non-teaching staff had a core increase of 2.75% included, and the teaching staff had a pay increase at approximately the $2,100 level, which the mix between CPI and points would be different because the CPI is higher in this fiscal year than it was in the prior year, but the total dollar amount going into planning for the budget for the 1920 process included pay increases very comparable to what was approved by the board just last October. And with the change that was put in there, we would potentially, as Mark mentioned, we have the third Friday count and a few other things coming up. But with some of the additional funds being added to the salary line, it does provide some additional potential flexibility for the HR committee this fall as pay increases are discussed in the October-November timeframe.
Is it true that the 3.3% is not the same for every employee?
Right. Yep.
Okay, are we ready to entertain a motion on the fourth draft?
Move approval of the 4th draft of the budget as submitted.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Policy committee.
In front of you tonight for the policy committee. Oh, Mike, did you want to run with this one? Or?
Sure.
You got it? I'm going to take that from you.
Well, I wasn't there.
Second reading. So this is actually the second reading of the
This is probably
policies
what
for the,
Right.
Yeah.
I was there.
A while
Mine.
ago.
this is for with the
Individual evaluations.
independent educational evaluations and the process for requesting one. These are the second reading on both of those policies.
So reading that 342.12 is just policy,
Right.
and the rule is
Or the descriptive
process.
process, correct.
And it sets out a means for parents to submit after the fact bills for testing done outside the district that come to a different conclusion.
It's rights that parents have, and this is the
Right.
process for.
Really very proactive parent support for if you disagree with the district testing.
Right.
You can have an alternative tester.
Correct.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any discussion on either of those policies? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Down to consent agendas. There's quite a few things in there this month. We can take them all, pull them out. Your choice.
Can I just make one comment just
Sure.
for clarification? When you take, part of what's in the consent tonight is also the annual meeting agenda. And one of the items that we did add to it and was discussed here, but wanted to make sure you were aware that it was added. It's different than what we've had in the past. It's a motion or a resolution to look at the realignment of the Waunakee seats to the school board. So we have a resolution in there that would bring about that issue. Julie had,
Yeah, I
Kinda
was,
had a
I
conversation
noticed
with
that that wasn't added in, and I was going to mention that I,
it should be, is it in there, Steve?
Yeah, it's H.
It's H.
It was there.
So if you take a look at the agenda, I just wanted to point that out before you voted, so you saw that.
So what should be added?
It's already
No,
there.
it's there.
So
The
then you
authorized
go down
term
to
cycle changes.
14.
oh, yep, got it,
Yeah,
yep.
authorized term
Perfect.
cycle changes for the Village of Waunakee board seats.
this is the concern that was brought forward with regards to that there's one election cycle that has one seat for the village, another one that has 0 seats, another one that has 2 seats. So this was an effort to kind of clarify that so that we would at a point in the future have an election cycle that corrects it, or puts it in a sequence where there's one every year.
Okay.
That's really what Julie brought forward to the board. I just included it here and wanted you to be aware of that, and as we move that piece forward, is that a...
So is there time for discussion on that, or
This is,
why do we do, why would we do it? What, you know, what is a benefit or a negative towards the way we currently have it?
The rationale, the year the one seat is opened, so the choice would be to run or not run, theoretically against an incumbent. If no one ran, no one could run the next year. And then the third year, your choice would be run against 2 potential incumbents and throw your hat in the ring. It's different kinds of races and not equal opportunity to run, in my estimation. It would be a fairer thing if a village seat was open every single year. Village seats do tend to attract more interest than the seats that are denoted for other areas. So it was an attempt to equalize that.
Right.
I think it's a fairer thing to do.
But if you look at it, you know, we're recruiting board members. You know, to join.
Not for village seats,
Speak for yourself.
less for village seats.
Were you already? You were.
I
Yeah,
was.
but he is Westport.
Okay.
Right, and I guess that's the thing, like Westport will always go a year when there's no one because
Right.
we're different
Especially
years. And-
seats.
because we only have 2 seats, but the village does have 3. I get what Julie's saying. You got 3 seats, why not have one up every year instead of double up and have none? It's,
So the time to talk about it theoretically is at the
meeting.
annual meeting when it will
Right.
actually be itemized as
yeah. I think it's
an
just,
item to vote
it's
on.
just an
So
item
when-
on the agenda.
so when this was brought up previously, when I did a cursory look into this, it stated that this would need to be, since it involves an election cycle and our board seats, it would require consideration at an annual meeting. So Steve and I just scripted the language here for a draft resolution, and if this was, agenda was approved tonight, what we would do is we would then go get the correct, make sure that we had the legal language that would needed to be included
Correct.
within the resolution to then bring it to the annual meeting. But the annual meeting is the place where this type of consideration would need to take place,
Correct.
because it's gonna require some tweaking of those seats where there would be an election cycle where one of them would probably be a 2-year seat, etc. So,
It's good. It's all good.
so I just wanted to make that clear before you did anything with the consent agenda tonight.
So, how do you feel about the whole shebang, or you want to pull something out?
Just 2 comments. One, I know we get policy. I'm not in favor of the volleyball trip going to Chicago, but it's our policy, so You know, I think we've got plenty of competition in the state that these guys can go to. The other thing, do I have to poll? My name is on the
Co-curricular. Yeah, that would probably be good for us to pull that out, and then you can abstain from that vote. Thank you, Jack, for pointing that out.
Okay. And a reminder that we did add into the consent agenda to consideration of a retirement agreement as discussed in closed session.
Correct.
I guess just to echo Jack's point, I would like to pull out the field trip thing to actually put on that too.
All right.
The which one?
The field trip.
So you'll pull the field trip, pull
And
the co-curriculars.
co-curricular.
Those are the two. Okay.
Okay, so I would like a motion for all but the co-curricular and the field trip.
So move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, thank you. So now let's do those one at a time, starting with the co-curricular.
The co-curricular
So I
hiring.
just, yeah, the
Hiring.
co-curricular update.
Position.
Move approval of the co-curricular list as submitted.
Second.
So any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstained. Thank you. And now we need the field trip.
I move we approve the volleyball field trip.
I second it. Any discussion?
I guess the only comment I would make on it is that we do have people fill this form out, and it really irritates me when they don't tell us the cost. They just say the booster club's taking care of it. If we're talking about equity and that kind of thing, I would like to know what the cost is, because you don't know. I couldn't even find this tournament online, so I don't know anything about it. If we are actually supposed to be approving it, I'd like the people who are making the request to take this seriously.
And is the boosters paying the registration fee? Because usually the boosters pay like the hotels and meals and bus and stuff like that.
We would probably, if there's a registration fee, that's
We would
part of
pay
the
that.
district. And that would be like for any, whether it was in-state or not, but then the boosters would be picking up any, if there was an overnight, et cetera. That's what they're picking up.
And this just says Booster Club is providing the funding, which,
Yeah, for the overnight is really what they're articulating, but we can clarify that in the future, Mike. Rebecca, why don't you and I work with Aaron on some of the foreign pieces?
Any other discussion? Mark?
You know, and that might be just a good point to make on, for future references for any proposals, that, you know, some are very complete, some are not, and so who's ever the advisor, the more detail that we can be given, the easier it is to make the decision, so that maybe they can, all our groups could be reminded of the amount of detail that would be helpful,
So
the exact dollars and cents.
Maybe the form needs to be more specific.
Right.
The
it sa-
administrator could help us with that.
I mean, it says include busing, hotels, et cetera, who is responsible for permit costs. I don't know if we have to be more specific. We just have to maybe reject them if they're not taking the form seriously, that's all. So,
Before we vote, is there a point where we want to bring this policy back to policy committee
Yes.
to clarify? Okay.
So
And I think,
future.
there would be a point to kind of get some thoughts on what we might want to do with that, because it's been there 2 or 3 times where no changes have been made, so it's a piece that I think it's certainly always a conversation, and I would advocate that we do find some place where we can come to consensus on what we like for the trips.
You know, a good place for our student and teacher voices.
Well, they also didn't provide any rationale for why they want to do that.
Actually, they did.
Yes,
Oh,
they
well, they
did.
did, sorry.
They did. They said they can't find this
They did say they can't
competition.
find this kind of competition
Uh-huh.
local.
And
What
you
does
look at
this
the,
kind
we
of
don't, you could
competition mean?
define how far it is, but we could travel to a lot of different places
Yeah.
in Wisconsin and be further than
And
this
yeah,
further
place.
that's
away.
true.
That's right.
That's true.
This isn't that.
And,
But the competition up north is probably
No,
not as-
exactly,
as strong
exactly.
as
You know, and
it
should it
is
be a
in Milwaukee.
radius and not an out of
Milwaukee
state?
and-
yeah.
yeah.
right.
Anyway, back to policy
point.
on that.
Yep.
Thank you, Mike, for going to policy. So any other discussion on the volleyball field trip? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Board business. The October 10th? The regional meeting, right?
So if you do want to attend the regional meeting, WSD Region 12 meeting, please let Rebecca know.
Yeah.
Correct.
Where?
And it's in Sun
Prairie.
Prairie this year.
October 10th.
Close. We could all go, except Judy, she's gonna be in France. But otherwise, we could all go.
It's a birthday
You're
party.
gonna be in France?
It's your birthday?
Can we go with you instead?
Well, it's a field trip, we have to change the policy.
October 10th.
It's outside of the state.
Just let Rebecca know.
I thought
Okay,
you were in
future,
France, Wisconsin.
future agendas and meetings?
Future
That's
agendas and
Florence.
meetings. What we need tonight, I'm gonna start off with, a lot of these involve Dave, so I think we're gonna try to set them and then see how they fit around his schedule. Facilities, we would like 2 meetings. One of them we've already tentatively set, we just haven't really brought it forth here, and that's on the 26th of August. The Facilities Committee will be interviewing the architects at 5 o'clock. So that's the first meeting that we had tentatively set as a committee. We would also like to set a second Facilities Committee meeting. This will be one where we'll bring forth the report from Rutler on the Prairie Verleen water piece, and also invite
Randy,
in our,
just coming back to interviewing the architect, was that at 5?
it's at 5 o'clock, yes.
How much day was that? I just want to make sure.
Monday, the 26th.
Yeah. So that's the Monday, the 26th at 5 o'clock is the architect interviews. The second meeting for facilities we'd like to find is for one to have Rutler come and present their findings from their report from Prairie Elementary. And we'd also like to, at that meeting, have that where we can invite in the residents around who have been following this, so that they can hear the presentation on what the findings are. So I'm looking, when I take a look at, Dave has gone through next Monday, the 19th.
Is that report ready?
And I have him on text if you want to schedule like that.
Oh, okay.
He's watching apparently.
My thought is, do we want to do another one the week of the 26th?
If we can, yes.
The week of the 26th would probably be best. So I'm thinking about either do the 28th, 27th, 28th, or 29th.
For facility,
For
but
facilities.
I guess I would like to come to that meeting.
Okay.
That's
It's fine.
I'll just tag them on.
This is August, right?
August.
Yep, August 27, 28, or 29.
I can't do the 27th.
Okay. Jack, do you have any of those days not work for you? 27,
I
28?
can do 28th.
Dave says the 29th works.
29th, okay, for everybody? You said that worked, correct?
29,
If we did like a 6 o'clock,
and you're gonna invite the.
I will invite the Verleen people.
Like to come to that.
So will you bring dinner then?
Berlin brings dinner.
Yeah. So facility is at 6 o'clock. The other one that I would like to do is we need an HR committee meeting.
That's when I have dinner.
So HR is Julie, Jack, and Joan. Hey, Brian, do you want to come up? We're going to schedule a HR committee. I don't think we have one set. If you would like to have this before the next board meeting,
Yeah, ideally that would be that week.
what is your ideal work?
So again, if we can do it that week of the 2nd.
September 2nd. So we could do I can't, well, let's see, who do we have here?
How long do you think the HR committee meeting's going to take?
Yeah.
What are you looking at?
I think it would be
Less than an hour.
relatively short.
Hour or less.
Could we do it during the day?
Could
Yes.
we do it on the 29th, before the facility committee? Can we do 5 to 6 HR?
You'd be ready on the 29th? August?
In theory, I could be, as well. I just gotta get my teacher work group together that week.
Yeah, that's right. One of the things we're trying, let me give you a little background. One of the things that we're looking at is there's been some latitude that we're given with trying to be, that we've learned about through DPI for educator effectiveness and some of the teacher eval pieces. When we look at the latitude that it gives us and also some feedback we received from staff, we want to change a little bit of the language in our guidelines. So what we've had a few conversations with a few staff individually. We want to work it back through our teacher work group, which I think you were looking to pull together that first week once.
Yeah, I thought that would be my best opportunities when they're all back.
And then we want to bring it through HR so we can bring it to the board in September.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could do it that week in the first week in September, that probably is best because we got to meet with the staff at the end of August.
Can we do it before school or not?
Sure. In the morning?
Can we do it in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
Julie?
Yes, other than, are we going for the first day of schools and making school
Yes.
visits or no?
Yes, we are.
So what about the 5th? There's
That's my Pilates morning from
Okay.
7:30 to
Four.
8:30, but
Can we go?
4?
I mean, I can do any morning that week.
Any one of those mornings would work.
Wednesday would be great.
4th?
Wednesday morning?
That works for me.
That works for me.
right?
Wednesday, 7:30.
So that's the 4th?
Yeah. Does that work for you, Jack?
Sure. Just gotta take me off to the middle school. What time can we meet them up at 4?
7:30.
7:30, there you go.
7:30 in the morning.
That's your house then, breakfast, right?
That's right.
And the last item, I'd like to schedule a co-curricular committee meeting. Thanks, Brian. And co-curriculars is Jack, Dave, and Judy.
I'm pretty open.
Let's try to see what's going to be best here. Jack, do you have a week that's a preference for you, or Judy? You're pretty open?
I'm pretty open until the
What about
24th.
Jack?
Yeah, I think I can make things work.
What about if we did it again? Could we do something that first week of school, that week of the 2nd of September?
Yeah. Do we do it in the morning there too, or not?
That's going to involve, Dave's not going to be able to. Dave's usually 5 o'clock.
I can only do Tuesday, Wednesday that week.
We've already scheduled something for Wednesday night.
What about Tuesday?
Wednesday night, yeah. Oh, we could do Wednesday evening,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That work?
What time works for you, Judy?
I'm open.
Pick a time. So Tuesday, or you said Wednesday the 4th?
Wednesday the 4th, 5:30?
Yep.
Sure.
And Randy, I was just past some special meetings.
No, I'm actually not, I can't do it that night, I'm sorry. That's when I
Okay.
can't be at. I'm sorry, let me
Oh,
back up,
back up.
to co-curricular. I can't do the 4th, and I'd like to be there for that one. Does, the 3rd does not work, Jack? Same time?
5. I could do 3rd, 5:30.
What about you, Judy?
Yep.
Does that work?
5:30.
Are you texting Dave and Mike? Is that what you're?
I was not listening because
That's
it's
all right.
not.
No, you don't need
Which,
to.
which one is it?
That's all right.
Co-curricular.
Co-curricular.
September 3rd, 5:30. It's a Tuesday.
Yep.
September 3rd, 5:30.
I think that gets me all of them. Okay.
So Randy, I was just passed a request for the curriculum presentation special meetings.
Okay.
The first one would be November 18th.
Okay.
And this, we're thinking like 4 or 4:30.
Got it.
Does that work for people?
What does that mean?
Oh.
I gotta look at this.
4:30, 4 won't work.
I did put
4:30
4
would.
there.
What date? I'm sorry.
November 18th, and I don't have a calendar.
It's a Monday.
It's a Monday.
And what do we do with that?
Oh,
That's where we have 2 meetings a year where we bring in different curricular departments.
actually that 4 would work,
Okay.
but I don't know if it would for Dave.
That co-curricular works for
It does? Okay, thank you.
9 to 3.
Yes, so the 18th of November.
So put in, curriculum?
Curriculum review.
Do we prefer 4 or 4:30? I'm thinking 4:30 would be better for Dave.
Yep.
Yep.
And then the second one would be January 27th.
What day of the week is that?
Monday.
I think that's fine. That's fine with me.
What day?
Monday,
I'm sorry.
January 27th.
Yep.
At this point, it works.
And that
Yep,
would be,
works.
that would be 4:30 again. And these are special meetings, so don't we have to vote
We
on
do.
them?
Why don't we just put them down and let's vote next time when Dave's here, because then I got all of us here.
Perfect.
Okay. Do we need to start setting up a curriculum committee meeting?
Yeah, we should schedule at least a September one.
Okay.
Should we do that now?
What days of the week work best for the
Curriculum is Judy, Joan, and Julie.
Can we meet in the middle of it? We can meet in the day too, can't we?
Yeah, well,
Who is it?
we usually meet right after school, like about 3:30 meeting. So,
Do we have one more setting?
So teachers.
right,
Okay.
so teachers can attend if we
Okay.
need input from teachers. Yeah, if we could set up September,
It's just me to him.
I'm traveling a little bit in September,
Me too.
so
Before the 24th?
I'm gone the 10th through the 13th of September.
I'm gone the 13th through the 17th and again on the 25th.
How about
completely,
the
the rest
19th?
of the month.
Or the 18th?
So, good Wednesday, yeah, I like Wednesday the 18th.
One day the 18th?
Wednesday, the 18th works for me.
That could work.
Julie, when did you say you're traveling?
September 10th through the 14th.
Okay, thanks.
And Judy has gone quite a bit in September too.
The 24th of September to the 24th of of October.
And when were you gone, Joan?
I put it
I've
on
got 'em.
his,
Oh,
I
Oh,
gave
yeah,
him a
no.
note.
I was just taking notes.
perfect.
Great.
Do we need to notice if several of us are going to show up for the staff welcome?
And when is that?
You put it in your,
Staff welcome is the 20.
Monday, the 26th.
Monday the
Yeah,
26th,
it's gonna look-
At 8?
7:45,
Yeah, we can just notice that it's a staff
I'll
welcome
just
back and
notice
that
it.
we may have a
may have a
quorum of the board present. So that's at 7:45 in the high school PAC.
I plan to go.
Mhm. Okay. Anything
I think
else?
that's it.
Before we adjourn, I guess an item that I'd like to bring back is board development. Because too frequently we don't get to it and, you know, where do we take our retreat information? Do we count on those times in between open and closed? It seems to be such an iffy time. Do we want to think about scheduling some additional meeting time? Where do we go?
Can you have additional meeting time that isn't public though?
Oh, we'd have to.
It'd
But
have to
it-
be,
But if it's in the closed session, you can, right?
But we move out of close before we go into open is when we usually do board development. But I don't know if it's ever happened when you've been here yet, Judy.
Yeah.
Well, do we plan to start at 5:30 maybe for the next couple ones? So
That's
that we-
an option. If we move close to 5:30 and try to end it more pretty timely, so we get some board development time.
I mean, I have an easier schedule than most people.
I
I
do
was
too.
just trying to
no,
suggest
yeah,
something
no, I
that
think that's a good idea.
Can we just try that maybe next
Is it on the
month?
9th?
for our September meeting. Can we start that at 5:30?
5:30?
What do you see coming down the pike there for closed session, Randy, next meeting? You know,
We thought this was gonna be a 15-minute
I told Dave
closed
last week
session.
this was gonna be a fast one.
I feel
don't
bad
know.
it got delayed another month, I do
I
have to
know.
tell you though.
I do
'cause
too.
I don't
We
see
had
a
good
lot
momentum.
right now, Jack.
Yeah, because it's basically new hires.
It's new hires, I mean, it's just things like, some of our discussion tonight was just unanticipated. So I anticipate it'll be straightforward. Yeah, I anticipate it being straightforward.
I would suggest that we probably have our closed session, make sure that we can start at 5:30, make sure that we're out of the closed session by 6, and then from 6 to 7, you've
And we
got,
have an hour.
Hit it.
You've got an hour.
Let's hit it for an hour.
We
Let's
have
do it.
expectations.
Next month.
And,
Let's do it.
We got an hour.
Great expectations.
yeah, and we spent 4 hours, so we know exactly
And that's
where
September
we're
9th,
going.
right?
September 9.
Yeah.
We're gonna start at 5:30. So do we need to
I think if we just
propose
vote,
that?
yes,
or
just propose
vote
it,
on
that's,
that?
yeah,
We
why don't you
you
just vote on it and then we will.
Can you put it on like an agenda item so that it happens?
Yeah, we can do that.
It is.
One of the pieces I
It is, and it just, it's been there, Jack, we just don't get to it.
you want a time with it, is what you
I
want.
want a time.
You want some
I
time
can
with
do
it,
that.
yeah, we
Okay.
can do that.
Timeline.
Yeah.
Time, so that we set our expectations.
Yeah, one of the things that it's on a related topic, is as we start to move forward with, and I know one of the things we talked about at the retreat was kind of agenda development and some of those pieces. As I've kind of reflected on the retreat piece, and particularly looking at really this, it was great to be able to sit back and really kind of listen as far as where people were coming from and what we were hoping, I think, to come out of the retreat with. But one of the pieces that I think might be helpful, and I wanted your feedback on before we did anything administratively, is there's many things that we're doing district-wide. You see them in budget requests, and you see them in the unfunded budget requests that come through the budget reports. And I think the question that I've had is, I've had some individual conversations with members of the board, is trying to tie them back to really what's the vision for that position? What's the reason for that position? And you can kind of broaden that out. We have had conversations, and we do have really a direction that we generally are trying to go in different areas of the organization. And I thought, as part of a way to at least help frame up what some of the priorities of the board might be, is to hear over the next few months, what are some of the high-level visions we have for different areas of really off of our strategic plan. Tie into some of those, where some of these budget requests fall, and then it gives you an opportunity to say, is this something that you agree with? Are there questions that you have? Are there things you want to see different? And ask questions about really the context of where those things fall. But as I see us working towards a referendum question, and I foresee a question that's going to be and exceed the caps, potentially to include some things programmatically that we just haven't been able to fit into our regular budget, I think a context of seeing where some of these things fit and having board involvement on what are your thoughts on the vision and direction that administration has around these, to me that might be helpful. And I'm just asking the board if you feel that that would be helpful in the work that you're trying to lead to.
I think it would be very helpful. Yes.
I think in that hour that we spend, maybe the first 15 minutes we talk about getting the agenda, what do we want on the agenda? We all come back with homework and say, hey, this is how we...
Yeah, actually, that's what I want. I mean, I actually had a discussion topic, and it is, who's responsible for the agenda, how do we get items on it, what, a discussion between a committee structure versus doing more work as a full board, which I know we've talked about. And then, here's our this is what we currently do at every meeting. Do we want to reorder it do we want to delete some of it? Should it be there every month, or, this was my discussion for tonight, which might be helpful because this is where I'm going. I think we need to go.
That would be helpful for all of us
Yeah.
to have that.
But I think if we, you know, to your point, Randy, you know, if we, maybe for the first half hour, we talk about the agenda organizing, and then the last half hour, you know, we throw up priorities.
Yeah.
You know, and we all have different priorities, right, as we come to this board. And I think if we all threw the priorities out there, then you can kind of synthesize it down into where does it fit in the budget, and do we all agree?
And part of what I've looked at is, last year ago, we approved really our strategic planning framework. And all of those pieces had a level of a vision of where we want to go with them. And I guess from my perspective, as I'm kind of looking through it kind of linearly, is starting with kind of back up from all the blue boxes and those reports that are coming here that are giving you the update, and sit back and say, where did these really come from, and where do we want to go with them? And that can fit into some of the priority pieces, because we've identified some of them. You see them on budget requests, but don't all of us necessarily connect them in of what we're trying to do. And I think then if there's things that the board wants to see additionally, those can be added in. Or if there's something that you see visionarily that you don't like, let us know. But I think to start moving us in a direction, to me, there has to be a place we start at. So that's at least my concept of what that looks like.
Yeah, and I think that strategic plan has to be revisited on an annual basis.
Absolutely.
And that's, I think, the retreat. You know, you sit down and you look at the blue boxes and so forth and say, hey, are we on track, and where do we need to go? But I think before we get that, we have to understand what our priorities are, you know, so that you can put them in the blue boxes.
Okay.
Marquetta.
Just a pragmatic question. Since we really want to talk about this stuff,
Yeah.
is there any reason we couldn't allocate the agenda to start with the board retreat for an hour, the board discussion, and then at 6:30 go into closed session? So that we're prioritizing the
Well, except
development
it's
piece.
open to the public, right? So,
But we could do that.
But we
and
could be in
post it
open
that
and
way.
move to close.
We could
But
go from
I'd
5:30
rather
to 6:30.
have more time on that, and then if we run out of time for close,
Yeah. We already have a
we adjust it.
mechanism. We can
We've
do
already
that
got
at
it
the
done.
end. Then we know it gets done. Let's try it.
Strategically, is there a reason we can't do that?
No, there's no reason you can't do that. We can do that. I mean, a lot of districts do closed session at the end of the meeting. And it was brilliant that it was on the front end here, because it at least boxes you into the front. Otherwise, those went on forever.
Sure.
So but you could flip it and have the board retreat follow up at 5:30 and just do the closed session at 6:30.
6:30 to 7.
Right.
I'm just thinking, it guarantees us, at least for meeting
Right.
one,
yep.
Right.
a quantum
We have-
number.
We have an hour. And we have to be sure that David knows we're starting at 5:30.
So I just want to clarify my question, is to see, is what I'm looking at is we have very few, we're together once a month. I'm trying to look at how can we use that time to the best benefit to get to what Jack's talking about as priorities. But I also think there's got to be a piece of trying to see from the folks who are doing this work on a day-to-day basis, what are some of the visionary pieces that we see as needs in our district? And is that to kind of script that out over the next number of months, that you start to see these different pieces in that format to help define what the priorities are and to receive your further input on that. Is that helpful? And I think, Jack, what I'm hearing from you is you would rather have the
conversation about priorities first, as opposed to talking about kind of the higher level visions for these areas over from administration. So I guess I'm just trying to get clarity.
I think you can get there quickly. You know, if we have our priorities and we lay them out there, we can match them with where are we today. You know, how do those priorities fit into, you know, what administration is saying.
Okay.
And quite frankly, I think most of the vision is going to be, you know, what we're doing today.
Sure.
But it'd be nice to have everybody on the same page as we go forward.
What I'll do then is I'm going to hold on any report pieces to the board for September, and we'll take our time with.
We'll hash this
We'll
out
have a
between
conversation
5:30
at the
and 6:30.
meeting about the priority piece, and then that's going to help feed in what some of the other pieces come in subsequent months. I'm just trying to make sure we have clarity on what we want to do as a collective.
I have a question though, if you're coming up with the priorities of what the administration is looking at, I think that would give me a better sense of what my goals would be to either help implement those or to question those and say, I think you're going in the wrong direction. So I think that's more important than sharing what my goals are. My goals are pretty undefined as a new member. So I guess I'd look at.
I can go either way.
Yeah. I feel that.
But we have to give Randy some
I
clarification.
just want a direction of what to do on this.
I liked your direction, but.
I don't know what others think.
I don't want to take this strategic plan and say, this is my priority off of this, and then we're going to guide our administration to follow my priorities. I feel more like Judy does, that to me, they spend a lot of time with their staff in June doing their self-analysis and coming up with where they feel they need to go. And I think before I can come up with what I value, I need to hear that as well. What are the priorities coming from them so we can move in the same direction? I really don't want to set the course for them in isolation.
So this was the part of the retreat that I hoped we were going to get to, but we didn't really, was the discussion on what our role is as board members. And I mean, we kind of did it with a little bit of our introduction where we said what we thought our personal role is, but the discussion about is there common agreement on what the board as a whole's role is. In other words, where's that line between leadership and adopting administrative recommendations? So what do we have a role to help drive the boat, or are we assisting rowing the boat? It would just be one way to put it. And maybe there's not one right answer, but that's what makes this part tricky. I agree with Mark. I don't really want to rule from a top-down perspective as a board. Personally, I would rather support and be on the same page with priorities, and I would prefer they bubble.
I would prefer personally Randy
Yeah.
set those priorities, but a report that I kind of would like back at the table is the building goals.
Yeah.
See, and
Can
I
we
think
have
all of
building
those-
goals?
I think all of those things, I think we're spanning a lot of topics here.
Mhm.
Because one of the things that we're looking at is priorities. We're looking at building goals, which absolutely is part of what has been very evidently clear and wanting to bring back.
But
And
Randy,
then there's-
I would submit that is a priority. You want to understand what the building goals are.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
that is a priority. If Randy doesn't know that, or if the administration doesn't know that's a priority of the board, then he's
Then what are we doing? Yeah.
he's just going to fit that in.
So maybe we need to do a little of each, Jen. Maybe we need to have Randy's vision.
Mhm.
And, I mean, we have an hour, and if we orchestrate it and, you know, be pretty mindful of our time, maybe we also can share things that, you know, are our passions, you know, and
Yeah.
I think maybe we can do a little.
And what I see is, I don't see this as in a half hour, I just lay out the district bid. I mean, I see, we gonna pick on one budget item we approved here tonight, and it was, we added a social worker per the dollars that was available through, that's part of a bigger plan to really address kind of social emotional learning and student mental health and many other areas. And I'd like to be able to say, here's kind of what our vision is for what where we're trying to, in a broad sense, go. Here's where some of these things fit. And I think that provides an opportunity to, from the board, to say, you agree with that, you have questions about it, etc. The second part, and I appreciate how you stated that, Jack, is if a priority is kind of a broad area, like we want to hear from the principals on their goals, and that's a priority of the board, then to me, that's a piece that I want to hear too. So it's both of kind of the helping out with the visionary pieces, and that's where my head is, because I'm trying to think about, at some point, I've got to provide a list that's going to say, here are the things that we feel are of utmost importance to move forward with that we can't afford in our current budget. That's going to be part of a referendum conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But I want you to build out a context of where those fit. And what you're saying is what you want to hear are more from the buildings and what's happening with their goals. And so I want to frame up both of those.
Yeah, that's one. You know, you want that at the board level.
Yeah.
You know, Mike, what do you want at the board level? You know, and that way, what it's doing is it's giving administration direction on what the heck we want to hear from administration and what's important to us. Not rowing the boat.
We're not just
We are not
helping
rowing
to
the
steer
boat.
too.
So let me just kind of build off of what you said, as that might be helping me here, is potentially where we want to start is having that conversation around this table during our retreat time next month. Because part of what could come out of this, another one I would throw out, is you want to hear the vision for administration on the instructional parts of our strategic plan. That could be a priority that then we build off of. Is that generally what you're...
And then
you could have other ones that people want.
Out of that, now you can set up your annual meeting schedule, saying, okay, we know that you know, the building goals are going to be in May. You know, that gives everybody an opportunity. They know that in May, you're going to be called upon to report to the board. It gives everybody time, everybody visibility on whatever it is. You know, it could be budget. It could be, you know, we're going to talk about referendums. You know, what's that referendum plan? You know, when should we be talking about that? And again, it just...
No, that helps me understand some of those pieces. Does that seem like a good place to start for next? I know you had some other agenda items there, Joan, but is that a good place and a comfortable place for everyone to start? Because I agree with you. One of the things I'm looking for is just the direction to be able to figure out kind of how we can, one, move the district forward. That's the primary issue. But two, is trying to meet the needs that you have and trying to help be part of that. So it's how do we do that together?
And I think within that, we will get to the discussion of how we spend our meeting time, which is kind of what came out of the retreat.
I think there's still good homework,
Yeah.
but
I mean, I still think that,
we need to get there.
But we need.
But we need the broader picture
We need a broader
discussion
picture.
first.
Sure.
I mean, and when you're looking at, everything's about language. And the way Jack defined priorities to me, as far as that discussion, I mean, that's helpful, because those are, you're saying a priority is hearing about the building goals. I mean, that to me, that's
building goals,
that builds into what we're doing. Priority might be learning more about the vision of X.
Yeah.
It could be, I mean, to me, that's a place that would give direction to where we're at if we kind of define priorities in the way Jack described it.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, Mike. Challenge for you.
I do.
You didn't do it.